Johnny Carson owned late-night television for 30 years. Every night, America saw the smooth smile, the sharp jokes, and the man who always seemed in control. But once the cameras went dark, the story changed. Behind that famous desk were 4 marriages, costly divorces, whispered affairs, bitter feuds, family wounds, and a private side few people could ever reach. And now, decades after his death, those closest to him have finally confirmed what so many had long suspected. So, what was Johnny really protecting all those years? John William Carson was born on October 23, 1925, in Corning, Iowa. His mother was Ruth Elizabeth Carson, and his father, Homer Lloyd Kit Carson, managed a power company. The family moved through several Iowa towns before settling in Norfolk, Nebraska, when Johnny was 8. At 12, he found a book about magic and ordered a magician's kit through the mail. His mother made him a cape, and by 14, he was performing as the Great Carson for the local Kiwanis Club, earning $3 per appearance. After high school, he hitchhiked to Hollywood. His military life began on June 8, 1943, when he joined the Navy. He trained through the V-12 program at Columbia University and Millsaps College, then became an ensign late in the war. He was sent to the USS Pennsylvania in the Pacific and arrived on August 14, 1945, the day Japan surrendered. The ship had been damaged by a torpedo attack, and Johnny worked in damage control, supervising the removal of 20 servicemen's bodies. Years later, he called it an awful experience. He also performed a card trick for Navy Secretary James Forrestal, who asked about his future. Johnny said he wanted to become a magician. After leaving the Navy, Johnny entered the University of Nebraska. He kept performing magic, now earning $25 per appearance. He studied journalism initially, then switched to speech and drama for radio. His thesis analyzed how to write comedy for radio. In 1949, he graduated with a degree in radio and speech and a minor in physics. His broadcasting career began at WOW Radio and Television in Omaha, where he hosted a morning show called The Squirrel's Nest. One routine had him interview pigeons on the courthouse roof about political corruption. In 1951, a connection led him to KNXT in Los Angeles, where he created the sketch program Carson Cellar. Red Skelton liked it and hired him as a writer in 1953. The next year, Skelton knocked himself unconscious during rehearsal. Johnny stepped in and carried the show. Jack Benny later invited him on and predicted he would become a successful comedian. Johnny moved to New York to host ABC's Who Do You Trust from 1957 to 1962. There, he met Ed McMahon, his future partner. The show became a hit, letting him interview guests freely without a strict script. NBC's Tonight began in 1954 with Steve Allen and became a hit under Jack Paar. When Paar left in 1962, NBC wanted Johnny to replace him. Johnny refused at first, fearing the pressure of interviewing celebrities for 105 minutes every weekday. NBC kept pushing until he signed in February 1962. He officially took over on October 1st. Ed McMahon joined him and opened each show with Here's Johnny. His real gift was turning weak moments into comedy. If a joke failed, he might dance to Tea for Two or announce, "Attention Kmart shoppers, clean up in aisle 4." Director Billy Wilder praised Johnny for arriving prepared and making rehearsed material feel natural. Viewers saw an easygoing host, but that relaxed style came from sharp timing, discipline, and control. On May 1, 1972, production moved to Burbank, California. By the mid-1970s, Johnny was television's highest-paid personality, earning about $4 million yearly. In 1979, he announced plans to leave. Analysts believe the program produced about 17% of NBC's pre-tax profits. A new 1980 deal shortened the show from 90 minutes to 60 and reduced his workload. Joan Rivers became the permanent guest host from 1983 to 1986. Jay Leno became the main guest host in 1987. Even with fewer appearances, Johnny stayed ahead of every rival. On his 25th anniversary, he received a personal Peabody Award. The board called him an American institution. Still, fame carried a strange cost. Millions believed they knew him, while people nearby often met a much quieter man. Johnny married Joan Jody Morrow Walcott on October 3, 1949, after they met at the University of Nebraska. They had 3 sons: Christopher, born in 1950, Richard, known as Ricky, born in 1951, and Corey, born in 1953. The marriage became unstable. Both partners were unfaithful, and their arguments could be fierce. The 2024 biography, Carson the Magnificent, described drunken fights, followed by long periods of anger, shame, or silence, a revelation that sparked renewed public interest in Carson's hidden life, much like the recent re-evaluations of other entertainment icons whose private behaviors have been re-examined in the #MeToo era. Co-author Mike Thomas said drinking could turn Johnny into a demon. The biography claimed there were times when Jody was physically bruised. Johnny reportedly woke deeply ashamed. The authors connected his troubled relationships to his mother, Ruth, describing her as emotionally distant. Johnny became host of The Tonight Show in October 1962. 7 months later, in May 1963, his 14-year marriage ended in divorce. Years later, Johnny admitted the show had received the energy his marriages did not. "If I had given as much to marriage as I gave to The Tonight Show, I'd probably have a hell of a marriage." On August 17, 1963, months after his first divorce, Johnny married model Joan Copeland. She encouraged him to accept The Tonight Show. Yet she later believed the show helped destroy their marriage. In Carson the Magnificent, Joan called his drinking a nightmare, describing a man who could become furious, suffer blackouts, and return home at 3 in the morning to pull sheets from a bed. By morning, he would apologize. In 1970, Johnny suspected she was having an affair with football star Frank Gifford. According to Henry Bushkin's 2013 account, Johnny gathered Bushkin, a private investigator, a lockpicker, and a photographer to enter Joanne's secret New York apartment. They found evidence confirming his fears. Bushkin said Johnny leaned against a wall and cried, his coat opening to reveal a .38 revolver in a holster. Johnny and Joan divorced in 1972. While that divorce continued, Johnny noticed model Joanna Holland at New York's 21 Club in 1971. On September 30, 1972, during the show's 10th anniversary party, Johnny announced they had secretly married that afternoon. She introduced him to travel in Western Europe. She spoke about his drinking in a 1979 60 Minutes interview. Johnny admitted alcohol did not make him warm or friendly. They separated in November 1982. And Joanna filed for divorce in March 1983. She received $20 million in assets and cash, including the Bel Air mansion and 3 Manhattan properties. Johnny turned the cost into monologue material, joking that his advice on marriage was like the captain of the Titanic giving navigation lessons. Off camera, Johnny was unlike his confident television image. He avoided most parties and became known as the most private public man who ever lived. Dick Cavett said Johnny seemed deeply uncomfortable socially. Writer George Axelrod said Johnny did not exist socially because living rooms had no television cameras. Musician John Oates described the same switch. Before airtime, Johnny was quiet. Once the countdown reached 3, 2, 1, the lights came on and he became Johnny Carson. When the program cut to commercial, that energy vanished. His privacy was deliberate. He refused to discuss his childhood, relationships, or personal feelings in interviews. On June 20, 1987, Johnny married for the 4th time. He reportedly met Alexis Moss on a Malibu beach. Their wedding was held quietly at his home overlooking the Pacific. Producer George Schlatter later said the real love of Johnny's life was Alex. A terrible family loss arrived in June 1991 when his middle son, Ricky, died at 39 when his vehicle went down an embankment near Cayucas, California. When Johnny returned to the show weeks later, he thanked viewers for their letters and showed Ricky's nature photography. During the tribute, producer Fred de Cordova signaled the show was running long. The interruption angered Johnny so deeply that de Cordova was banned from the studio floor permanently. Less than a year later, Johnny left The Tonight Show. His farewell stretched across several nights in May 1992. Robin Williams and Bette Midler were his final guests. Johnny brought his surviving sons onto the stage. Ricky's photograph appeared during the closing credits. After 30 years, Johnny stepped away at 66. NBC chose Jay Leno, though Johnny believed David Letterman was the rightful successor. Johnny chose complete retirement. He rarely gave interviews and declined NBC's 75th anniversary celebration. He played tennis, traveled with Alexis, and published humor pieces in The New Yorker. His last television appearance came on Letterman's show in May 1994. Letterman brought out Johnny as the band played his theme. The audience stood and cheered for 90 seconds. Johnny sat behind Letterman's desk, stayed silent, and left. He later blamed laryngitis. Even without a word, he owned the room. Johnny sometimes sent Letterman jokes for his monologue. After Johnny's death, Letterman opened one broadcast with a monologue made entirely from those jokes. Health problems narrowed Johnny's life. He smoked heavily for decades, reaching 4 packs daily. In March 1999, he suffered a heart attack and underwent quadruple bypass surgery. In September 2002, he revealed he had emphysema. On January 23, 2005, Johnny died at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. Respiratory failure caused by emphysema ended his life at 79. His body was cremated, and his ashes were given to Alexis. Following family wishes, no public memorial took place. Tributes came from entertainers and President George W. Bush. A park across from the former NBC studios in Burbank was named for him. And now, decades after his passing, the confirmation from those closest to him has finally arrived. The man who made America laugh every night carried wounds the cameras never captured. Those who knew him best have confirmed what many long suspected, that behind the desk, behind the monologue, behind the carefully constructed persona, was a man who gave everything to his audience and often had little left for the people who loved him most. Johnny Carson owned the night for 30 years. But the daylight hours belonged to a much more complicated truth. Did Johnny Carson's private life change the way you see the man behind that famous smile? Let us know in the comments.